Are your faves really iconic? Hi, I'm your host DJunQT, and today we're talking about icons in the K-pop scene, and when I say icons I mean iconic songs. Now iconic can mean your group has that one hit song that everyone has heard of or listened to, but it doesn't exactly make the group itself iconic. Groups I consider iconic would be groups like Big Bang with multiple hits like Bang Bang Bang, Fantastic Baby, Monster, or 2NE1 with Fire, Follow Me. EXO with Mama Coco Bop. I mean the list goes on, such as SNSD, Wonder Girls, Kara, Beast, Block B, NCT, BTS, Blackpink, GOT7, but those are all third-gen groups. Today we will be talking about fourth gen, especially since fifth gen will be making their appearance soon. Now fourth gen is crowded with a decent amount of groups. I mean there's some I don't even know exist, there's some I know exist but haven't been drawn to, and that's because of the fact of how oversaturated the market has become. You can stand at least 10 groups out of 4th gen, and out of 10 maybe one is actually iconic. In fact, not even 50% of debuted 4th gen even make it to award shows or even win an award for that matter, past a Rookies Award or something. So now that that's been said, let's look at your faves. Everyone likes to call their faves iconic for the littlest thing or every comeback they make iconic, but that's why you're a stan, aka an obsessive fan, and that's where our views part, because unlike some of you, I can undelusionally objectively say some of my faves are in fact not iconic. People have a hard time viewing objectively what can make or break a group, but in the grand scheme of things, say a decade later, what is the survivability rate of that very group's songs, title tracks, albums, B-sides? What is their playback value? So as controversy as this may seem, I'm going to rate your group's survivability minus groups formed off of survival shows. For obvious reasons, they always do well, unless you're Kepler. I will be judging their group identity, their title tracks, along with their overall album's playability. Lastly, I'll rate their overall survivability rate on how well their groups might survive in the years to come. Now granted, I can't rate every group within the 4th gen simply because, as I said, there's millions of them and I don't know every single group. So with that being said, we'll be talking about the groups I do know, some mainstream, some not so mainstream. Starting off with SKZ, aka Stray Kids. Now Stray Kids was one of the very first 4th gen groups I got into, so this will be interesting. SKZ has come a long way from where they began, especially from beginning, since they got a lot of backlash and hate for the music they make on top of their controversies and even a member leaving the group. Personally, I stopped listening to albums from SKZ around Levanter, Double Knot era, but I still tune into every title tracks they drop. Unfortunately for me, Stray Kids' sound doesn't necessarily draw me in to listen to them, and their B-sides don't really have me seated, but I still like them even though I don't mess with a lot of music they drop. As noisy as people say they are, they still have a sound unique to them, from Elevator, God's Menu, and Maniac. They have a lot of hits still, and I also like their Racha unit songs such as Taste and Can't Stop. They're also popular overseas, and in the latest years their popularity in Korea has skyrocketed tremendously, so SKZ's survivability rate is pretty much 100% simply because their sound is unique. Even if you don't like their songs, they have some bops and their playback value is decent enough, although it is more so their B-sides with a 65% no skips personally, but it is their title tracks that make up a lot of their identity and what put them on the map. I don't see them fading into the background sea of the many 4th gen groups, even with 5th gen coming up. Icons. Next group is one of my faves simply because they don't miss. Now granted, this may sound biased, but I assure it's not, because 80s has been accused, much like SKZ and NCT, in making noise music, but they've come from humble backgrounds such as a little unknown company called KQNT, and their growth has been amazing to watch. But onto their music. I've heard people call them one-hit wonders with their song Deja Vu, however keep in mind these same people are toxic girl group K-pop Twitter stans, aka obsessive. 80s has released hit after hit with their title tracks from Treasure, Pirate King to Illusion and Wave, Hala Hala, The Real, Guerrilla War, Bouncy. Even their Japanese releases hit, which not a lot of groups can do simply because they seemingly don't really put the same effort for their Korean releases into them. I've listened to every 80s album since their debut, and their B-sides are god tier. Putting aside K-pop, I would genuinely listen to them as a group alone. They have many good B-sides such as Aurora, Mist, Thank You, Celebrate, and like all their albums, their recent album release, The World EP2, Outlaw, no skips depending on your taste. So overall their album's playback value 98% no skips, and their title tracks being iconic enough and unique to their group's identity. Even though their Korea popularity is questionable, their overseas fanbase can carry them alone, because if it's one thing people are going to tune into whether they like them or not, it is 80s, because they know they release quality. So overall I would say their survivability rate is 98% simply because of their questionable Korean fanbase. Iconic. Next group we will talk about is G-Idol. Now me and G-Idol have a love-hate relationship, but they're also one of the only 4th gen girl groups I actually actively engage in keeping up with. But personally their title are a 50/50% hit or miss, because although they have an identity and I find them to be a unique stamp on 4th gen girl groups, their music is unfortunately just not that replayable for me. They have noticeable tracks such as Senorita, Tomboy, Dumdy Dumdy, and Oh My God, They've been accused of losing their identity since their first song La Ta Ta, but I think they've been pretty consistent in their sound because G-Idol never had much lore intricated into their music anyway. Their sound, which is experimental concept-wise, has no specific theme to stick to, but when they drop a sound because of the recognizable talent of the members individually, you know it's a G-Idol song, and this is also what makes them memorable. Their B-sides 60% no skips playback value, but might be even lower depending on your taste, and even though their title tracks bring controversy every single time along with the controversy of certain members, I don't see G-Idol going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, it's like they thrive off of it, and their popularity in Korea and overseas is decent. I'd say their overall survivability rate is 100% unless some controversy that really makes or breaks them pops up, but Idol has already made their mark, so other than that, G-Idol will live to see another day. Iconic. Next group is GWSN. Now I know some of you might be like, who the hell is that? Their alphabet name does not help them, but I think what really messed them over was their company. Them having popular enough members off of a produce survival show, you'd think they'd make the most of it, but no. When GWSN first came out with their busking, they had a decent size fanbase along with the voters from produce looking forward to their debut. Their first release, Puzzle Moon, was really unique with its sound and it being something I've not really heard before, and their lore was really interesting. With their vocals, visuals, concept and unique tunes, I think if more people paid them attention, their career would not be paid dust. But even that wouldn't save them from bad management and promotions from their company even more, so them being from a pretty small unknown company really sealed their fate. With that being said, their album's playback value is more than groups that are more popular than them, with it being a 100% playback value. However, with their wilting popularity in Korea and their 5% recognizability overseas, I don't see them surviving much longer, especially with a wave of incoming 5th gen. Overall survivability rate 30%. Actually, I think they already disbanded. In my heart they will always be iconic, but in the K-pop scene where 5% knows them, iconic could have been. Next group, Everglow, another one of my faves, being under a rather unfortunate company. Yuehua has a track record of just selling the bag with perfectly good lineups and groups, Everglow not being their first and won't be their last. Everglow's title tracks are all hits. I can see generations down the line people discovering and going, wow, they're really good. That's because they are. However, again, with long hiatuses, poor management and bad line distribution, it really makes you wonder, had Yuehua utilized them properly, they could have been up there with top running 4th gen girl groups today. Their latest upcoming comeback being the only one in a hot minute. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but one thing again, if people are going to tune into a comeback, it's going to be Everglow. Their B-sides being decent enough with a 70% playback value. Their music is pretty quality and their title tracks always hit, but their identity as a group itself is something I really can't put my finger on. But that doesn't thwart their popularity in the slightest, which something not a lot of groups can do. However, if the way they've been handled and managed keeps up, I'm not sure they can keep up, so overall their survivability rate is a 55%. Icons. Maybe. Next group is CIX, another example of poor management, being that they have members from YG Treasure Box and a former 101 member. You'd think their company would be more consistent with promotions, however, like always, they lack again. Individually, CIX has very talented members, but usually boy groups with smaller amount of members do mediocre at best. CIX only having 5 really makes it work. They have heavenly B-sides like Blackout, Imagine, Rewind, I could go on and on. Their album's playback value 99% no skips. Their title tracks, however, are a hit or miss, but never bad either way. Their Japanese releases are amongst some of the best. However, as talented as they are as a group, again, their identity as a group is like Everglow. Questionable. But like G-Idol, the recognizability of the members makes up for that. Like if I hear Jinyoung's voice or BX rap, I'm like, okay, that's CIX. Their popularity in Korea and overseas being again just decent enough to get them out of Nugudam, I'd say their overall survivability rate is 65%. Icons. Not necessarily, simply because not a lot of people check for them. Next group and last group of the video is none other than ITZY. Now ITZY is getting a lot of hate recently, enough as it is, but I want to be transparent. However bad their recent releases have been, keep in mind ITZY is still one of the more well-known groups of 4th gen, beating out your Nugu faves. With perks of being from a bigger established company like JYP, even if they fail to chart, they will still be known simply because of their first releases like Dala Dala, Wannabe, but known doesn't exactly make you iconic. Their playback value of their B-sides are 40%. I can count on one hand the B-sides I actually listen to from them, and their title tracks, although standout at the beginning of their career, have always been questionable to me, but they do have a sound. If I hear a song, I'm going to be like, oh, that's ITZY, for all the wrong reasons of course, but nonetheless they are still, however, pretty recognizable. And their fanbase in Korea and overseas is not going to let them fall through anytime soon, no matter how unbearable and unlistenable their sound is. Their overall survivability rate is 75%. They'll never fall back into Nugudam no matter the quality of their releases, and that in itself is a feat. Kinda of iconic. Okay guys, so this has been my survivability ranking. Leave comments and tell what you think and how it differs from my opinion. I did want to do more Nugu groups, but it only proved my point in the end result, and it would be no point knowing that half of them will not be memorable in the future, so I did choose more mainstream groups because it only makes sense. Granted, I didn't get to a lot of groups, but this video is already long enough as it is, so maybe I will do a part 2, so be sure to recommend some groups you think I should do the next video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed and want more. Bye bye.